Welcome back to Franchi Talks Asian Arts. I'm Franchi and I'm back with a new video. Today's video I was inspired to make by some, let's say, social media column which I worked with in collaboration with the Museum of Oriental Art Edoardo Chiossone in Genoa in Italy. Throughout last year we collaborated, we worked together to create a series of posts which we shared on their Facebook page and my Instagram page. So some of you who follow me on Instagram may have seen them, but if you didn't, I'll link both of these pages down below. I especially recommend checking out the Facebook page of the Chiossone Museum because it's very active. They post a lot of pictures of the artworks in their collection together with descriptions and kind of in-depth posts about them, so it's kind of a treasure trove of Japanese art. But so I thought that it would be fun to turn the series of posts into a video, also because I feel like social media pages such as Instagram or Facebook, their posts have kind of a short longevity. They are still there, but they kind of get lost in the newer posts. And also a video kind of gives me more space, more breath, so I can talk more slowly about certain things, so I enjoy them more. And also everyone on YouTube can also watch it without using Instagram or Facebook. As always, I would like to drop a reminder here that if you enjoyed the video, if you feel like you learned something from it, you can choose to support the channel. You can do so in such easy ways such as clicking like, sharing a video with a friend that you think might be interested in this topic, and also you can consider sending me a little tip through the website Ko-Fi. The link is in the description. But for now, enough with the talking and let's jump right in. So for our little series, me and the Chiossone Museum, we decided to talk about a traditional deck of Japanese playing cards called Hanafuda. And we decided to focus especially on the decorative motifs which are featured on the cards, which include plants and animals. One deck of Hanafuda playing cards is made up of 12 suits, and each suit is connected to a month of the year, and it's decorated with, for example, plants and animals which are characteristic of that month. And so what we did was that for every suit and its decoration, we went through the collection of the Chiossone Museum and we looked for an object which was somehow connected to that decorative motif. And let me tell you, we found some really nice things. 12 suits is actually a lot to talk about, and so for today's video I had to narrow it down, and actually I'm going to talk about 3 suits, and the remaining 9 are going to be covered in separate videos, so this will become like a little mini series, which is, I think, always nice. And because we are starting to talk about this in March and let's say spring is approaching, I want to start from the suit that actually is connected to this month, so we can do this as we go along and talk about themes which are relevant to us. But don't worry, because the first suit of the deck, which is connected to the month of January, is gonna be covered just later on in a video which I will do probably next winter. Let's briefly introduce the Hanafuda playing cards. The name Hanafuda literally translates as flower cards, and this kind of deck of cards started being made around the beginning of the 19th century, of course for people to play with and eventually gambling. The first standardized production actually started in 1889, and they were produced by Nintendo. You will probably know them, and they still make Hanafuda. I have here a little deck of cards which is made by Nintendo. You can get them made by other companies as well. They're probably a little bit cheaper. Now I'm gonna show you what the cards look like. It's gonna be a bit of a struggle. They are smaller than your traditional Western playing cards, especially European cards. They are like about 5 centimeters long for 3 centimeters wide, and they're a little bit thicker. The deck is made up of 48 cards, which are divided into 12 suits of 4 cards each. Regarding the natural decoration that we can see on the Hanafuda cards, we have to keep in mind that a special attention to nature and to natural phenomena and the changing of seasons was already present in literature and the painted and decorative arts as early as the 9th century. And this special attention for sure lasted until the 19th century, and that's why such motifs are found on the Hanafuda cards. Let's start by looking at the Hanafuda cards connected to the month of March. We can see that they feature a decoration of cherry blossoms, of curtains, and of a strip of card used for writing poems called tanzaku. The cherry blossom, as so many of you already know, is a tree and a flower which is beloved in Japan. They are called sakura, and they have been present for centuries in Japanese art and in Japanese poetry. In fact, they are already sung about in the collection of poetry called Kokinshu, which is dated to the 10th century. In addition to the beauty, the aspect of cherry blossom, which is treasured and sung about in Japanese culture, is their impermanence, their frailty. In fact, cherry blossoms fall in the slightest of winds, and their withering and their falling is actually celebrated as much as their flowering. In Japan, a special sensitivity to the impermanence of things had already been developed during the Heian period and lasted all throughout. This aesthetic, this sensitivity, is usually indicated as mono no aware, a sensitivity to things. The love for cherry blossoms is manifested culturally in Japan by the custom of organizing hanami, so picnic and banquets under the flowered cherry trees. This custom is actually represented in our Hanafuda cards because we can see one which is decorated with a curtain. This curtain actually references to the custom of traditionally hanging curtains, fabrics and kimono between the branches of the trees to kind of create more reserved and private spaces in which to sit. And we can see that the other Hanafuda cards depicts a strip of card for writing poems called tanzaku, and this tanzaku has writing on it. It says Mi Yoshino. Yoshino is actually a reference to the hills in Yoshino, the area of Japan in which is very famous for the flowering of cherry trees. So we were inspired by these cards to find artwork from the collection of the Chiossone Museum, and we found this beautiful woodblock print by Kikukawa Eizan, dated to 1812. The woodblock print is dominated by colors of peach and mossy green, which are beautiful. They kind of contrast with each other. I think they're complementary colors. We can see a group of people gathered under a grove of cherry trees in full bloom. We can see that they marked off the area with curtains tied to the trees, and they brought with them a red carpet, perhaps to sit on, and a sage jubako, which was literally a picnic set. There were carry ball cases which contained a set of containers for food, and usually a bottle used to contain rice wine, sake. The group which is attending this beautiful picnic includes 7 women, a young aristocratic man, and a child. The young nobleman on the left is holding a strip of card in his hand, a tanzaku, just like we mentioned before. and he is about to write a poem. On his left we see a child who is handing to him a box containing all the instruments used for writing at the time, so an inkstone used to grind the ink and a set of brushes. The women on the right are all looking at him and they're waiting to hear the verses that he has thought of, apart from one. We can notice that there is a sumptuously dressed woman on the right, and instead of looking at the man, she is withdrawing herself shyly. She is looking away. In this scene of this woodblock print, we can actually recognize a scene from a kabuki theater drama called The New History of Usuyuki, which was written in 1741. And in the figure of the young aristocrat, we can recognize the samurai Sonobe no Saemon, and in the beautiful noble woman, we can recognize the princess Usuyuki. These two are the protagonists of the play, which tells this story of the meeting between them two during a picnic under the cherry blossoms in the Kiyomizu temple in Kyoto, and of the falling in love of Princess Usuyuki with a samurai, and of the tragic consequences that this event will have. And what we can say is that it's such a beautiful, delicate depiction of this scene in the woodblock print media. Let's pass on to the Hanafuda cards for the month of April. We can see that they are decorated with wisteria plants, tanzaku cartouche again, and a flying cuckoo bird. The wisteria is a beautiful plant which blooms in clusters. Its blooms are in colors of purple, lilac and white, and the color purple was always in Japanese culture considered a royal color tied to the imperial court, and so was the wisteria. But in general, the wisteria actually blooms widely in certain regions of Japan, such as the Kansai region and the Kii Peninsula. And so certain locations became well known and beloved by Japanese people for the blooming of the plant. One of these locations was the Kameido Tenjin Shrine, and so the Chiossone Museum found a woodblock print which depicts this location with a flowering wisteria. We can look at it now. It's a woodblock print which was designed by Utagawa Hiroshige, who chose to represent not the shrine itself in his woodblock print, but rather he decided to depict one of the drum bridges which are found on the way to the sanctuary. We can see that the bridge is framed by the branches of a wisteria, and it's such a beautiful scene this one represented. We can see that it's made up of these just exposed layers. In the forefront we see the wisteria hanging low, some birds flying, and then further back we can see the bridge and then some women walking onto the bridge. And then further in the background a group of people is sitting under a pergola which is covered in flowering wisteria. And in fact, during the Edo period, when this woodblock print was made, the people living in Edo, the capital city, now we know it as Tokyo, actually used to visit this sanctuary during the flowering season of the wisteria to admire its beauty and enjoy the atmosphere. And so I love how the woodblock print manages to create such a scene of urban life and enjoyment of city life of the time. On the Hanafuda cards for the month of April, we also see a cuckoo, a bird flying past some wisteria branches. And the cuckoo is also a typical bird of the month because it's a migratory bird which spends away its winter months and actually comes back for this season when about the time when the wisteria blooms, so the two are often associated. And in general, this bird is beloved and sung in Japanese poetry and pictured in art especially because of the sound that it makes. It kind of has a sad undertone, and so it has often been linked to sadness and unrequited love and a kind of nostalgic mood. Because of the time also when the bird comes back from migration, it's considered a time of late spring and early summer. It kind of signifies the near arrival of summer. And this might be weird for us to think about, that April is considered a late spring, but we have to keep in mind that there were certain differences between the lunisolar calendar, which was traditional in Japan, and the Gregorian calendar, which actually was only adopted in the late 19th century, and to which the lunisolar calendar was actually adapted into. So that's why some some suits of the Hanafuda and their, let's say, yearly or monthly motifs may seem different from how we perceive the year. In the collection of the Chiossone Museum, we found a woodblock print featuring a cuckoo accompanied by falling petals and a full moon in the background. In the woodblock print, we also see a poem. It reads, "Futakoe wa Izozaki koetsu hototo gisu." I actually found several translations of this poem, and they all kind of gave a different interpretation, so I chose to read to you the one that to me seems to put more emphasis on the strength of the cuckoo song and how this is heard from great distances, and it's so easily recognizable and therefore also beloved by the poet who chose to write about it. It translates as, "The double cuckoo song is heard up to 2 provinces beyond Izozaki." We saw the Hanafuda cards with the wisteria and the cuckoo, and actually we have to say that this plant is not only linked to cuckoos but with birds in general, and this is because the petals of the wisteria are really frail. Just like the cherry blossoms, they fall easily with the wind, but their falling can also be caused by the flapping of wings of birds which are flying near them. And so this scene is often depicted in art, and for example in woodblock prints. And so, inspired by this image, we found another woodblock print in the collection of the Chiossone Museum, this one as well by Hiroshige. We didn't plan for this, but woodblock prints and Hiroshige's woodblock prints have really kind of dominated this video. We can see this one, which is dated to this, let's say, this time frame between 1843 and 1847, and it represents a swallow flying beside a wisteria branch. The swallow, just like the cuckoo, is also a migratory bird, and it comes back to Japan during the same time of the flowering of the wisteria, and so the two are often represented together. Actually, Hiroshige seems to have been really into this combination, because there are countless representations of the two together. I like this one that we selected from the collection of the Chiossone Museum, because I feel like he really gave a beautiful shape to the wisteria branch, how it moves diagonally from the top left, reaching the middle of the print, and then curving to make space for the flying swallow, which is also beautifully represented. And again, on the top right we find a poem which reads, "A few purple wisteria flowers remain where the dew is. From the bottom of the green bamboo bush, colored in a soot hue, you can hear the voices of the evening bird." And the poem hints at how only a few of the flowers are left on the tree, and so it also hints for the arrival of summer. And now let's look at the last suit for today's video. We can see the 4 cards of the suit dedicated to the month of May. These are dedicated to the iris flower in their decoration. So we can see iris flowers, we can see a zigzag bridge, and also a strip of card for poem writing. Irises bloom around this time, around May, and they bloom in beautiful dark colors such as dark purple, but also lighter colors such as lilac and white. And if the other plants that we have seen today were tied to the literary tradition of Japan, the iris actually is doubly so, because it's the protagonist of a very famous poem from a collection of a kind of novel made up of poems, which is thought to have been written by Ariwara no Narihira, which is called the Ise Monogatari, which was written in the 9th century. And in this collection of poems, Ariwara no Narihira recounts how he has been exiled and is now looking for a new place to live. And in one of the poems, so in kind of an episode of this collection, he recounts arriving to a location called Yatsuhashi, which is basically a swampy area which is crossed by a bridge made up of 8 parts which are connected in a kind of zigzag pattern. And this characteristic is kind of implied in the name Yatsuhashi. Hashi means bridge. And around the bridge and in this swamp area, countless irises are blooming. And this view must have made the impression of Ariwara no Narihira, because actually he decides to write a poem about it. I will read you the poem. I just apologize in advance for not having the best classical Japanese pronunciation, since this was written in the 9th century. It reads: Karagoro mo kikutsu nare nishi, tsuma shi areba, harubaru kinuru, tabi o shi zo omou. And it's been translated as, I wear robes with well-worn hems, reminding me of my dear wife, whom I think of fondly always. So, as my sojourn stretches on, even farther from home, sadness fills my thoughts. And if we look at the poem, if we look at the first syllable of each verse of the poem, we can notice that it makes up the word kakitsuhata, which was the name for iris at the time. Today they're more commonly called kakitsubata, or at least one of the types of iris is known as kakitsubata. And because of the themes of the poem, of the state, of the emotional state of Ariwara no Narihira when he arrived at Yatsuhashi, actually the irises have been linked to this kind of feeling of longing, of nostalgia from home and sadness. And throughout the centuries they really become a motif which is found again and again, both in poetry and in art, both applied arts and pictorial arts. From the collection of the Chiossone Museum, we have selected this triptych of woodblock prints by Utagawa Kunisada II, who represents a group of hikers in Yatsuhashi. You can see a group of 3 women, a man and a child standing on a wooden bridge, busy collecting irises. And the strong color of the woodblock prints with blues, greens, greys, they convey the atmosphere of this stormy summer evening. And from the surprised expression of the protagonists of the woodblock print, we can imagine that they've been surprised by the rain, but perhaps they shouldn't have been, because the 5th month of the year in Japan is characterized by a kind of light and continuous rain, which is called Samidare, the rain of the 5th month. And the collection of irises on such rainy days is a recurring theme of ukiyo-e prints, and usually it's connected to feelings of love and longing. because the rain, it always kind of brings this kind of sad atmosphere. In the sky we can also notice there's a cuckoo flying. We talked about the cuckoo before, and it's also connected to the imminent arrival of summer in this case as well. And once again we can admire how the woodblock print artists, but as we know, the woodblock prints, they weren't the effort of one artist, they were a communal effort by groups of artisans and craftsmen. So we can appreciate how they all work together in creating such a vivid, such a lively picture of a moment in the life of the protagonists of the scene. Perhaps these weren't real people, but we can imagine that other people of the Edo period lived through such a similar moment of going to collect irises and then being surprised by the rain. At the same time though, why this is like a folk scene, it is also layered with literary references and motifs. Of course, the first reference is the Ise Monogatari and the poem by Ariwara no Narihira, but there is more to this. There is also references to another literary masterpiece of Japan, which is the Genji Monogatari, a novel which was written by Murasaki Shikibu in the 11th century. Actually, woodblock prints inspired by the Genji Monogatari were very popular in the Edo period, because it was at this time that a kind of popular novel, a parody of the Genji Monogatari, was published. The novel was called The Rustic Genji, written by a fake Murasaki, and it chronicled the adventures of a prince, Mitsuuchi. And the artist Utagawa Kunisada, who was actually the master of Utagawa Kunisada II, designed illustrations for the novel, and he also designed a series of prints which were inspired by the original Genji Monogatari. And just like his teacher, Utagawa Kunisada II went on to create works which were inspired by the Genji Monogatari and by the Rustic Genji written by the fake Murasaki. And so he was inspired by this latter novel, by the parody, and he decided to create some depictions and woodblock prints of it. But he also decided to mix it with some folk themes, specifically yearly festivals. And he produced the series of prints, the Genji of Byess, 5 festivals in the color purple. And this triptych that we are looking at right now, it's part of this series. And the triptych itself is entitled Children's Dances, the Joys of the 5th Month. In fact, in the scene we can see the child is intent of picking iris flowers. And these flowers are a symbol of Children's Day, which is celebrated on the 5th of May. And the iris was in fact considered traditionally a symbol of masculine virtues, and its long, thin and pointed leaves are shaped like swords, and they were added to the bath water on the evening of the eve of the party, and they were also steeped in the sake, which was going to be consumed during the festivity. And so, with this kind of fun and light-hearted woodblock print, I would like to conclude today's video. I was really happy to be able to make this as a result of the collaboration with the Chiossone Museum. So of course I would like to take a moment to thank the museum for working with me. Grazie. And for everyone who's been watching, thank you of course as always for watching. If you enjoyed the video, and I really hope you did, you can remember to click like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Don't forget, if you feel like it, to leave a comment or a question in the comment section. And if you can, consider supporting the channel by sending me a tip through the website Ko-Fi. But for now, I just hope to see you again soon. Bye!